Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, gentlemen, and happy Tuesday.
It's
Tuesday
Tuesday
that was
again.
a good one. That was a good one. Someday maybe it's not going to be so good.
Yeah, maybe there'll be a little trepidation with one of those phrases.
Yeah,
Could be.
little
Maybe in a recording that's coming up.
Yeah,
Never missed one yet.
No, we have not missed one yet.
All right, jumping in today for a couple introductions. But before we go to that, let's just quickly talk about what our main topic is going to be today. Main topic today is going to be around talking or delivering what those quick wins are. What does a quick win mean? When you start a project with Power BI, what would define a quick win? And why is this impactful? Why do we care about doing these things initially in the rollout of Power BI? And we'll kind of talk about our observations around why that may be a good thing or what we've seen and how this helps communicate the story of Power BI to your organization. With that, let's jump into the news. I feel like I really need like a little audio bite for some news stuff.
Like that tick.
Yeah, like
like
the news
Radio show, though. That's like more of a radio show. If we were
Are we
like,
not really a radio show though, really?
Yeah, I mean,
Can we
small
be?
steps.
Who knows someone?
I mean,
from Sirius?
podcasts are the new radio show, aren't they?
It is.
I would agree. It's
by the way,
interesting you say that. I like that.
I'm totally down from doing a 4 to 7 Power BI in the morning.
Oh boy. Whoa. You're never going to want to sleep again, are you? You just want to punish yourself all the time.
With you guys, it's never punishment. It's a reward.
Oh, every time I'm around Seth, I feel like I'm getting punished. I feel like I did something wrong. Seth's like, that's a good point, Michael.
The love.
Seth's got really good ideas, and I always feel like I'm like, oh man, he thought about things way better than I did. So I'm wrong again.
So not true.
We were recording yesterday.
This is totally a jest. I'm totally teasing. Seth doesn't make me feel like I'm a bad stepchild.
My mother-in-law's in town. The amount of laughing we were doing yesterday, I came up. I'm like, all the laughter you heard, all genuine. Genuine kind of thing.
Good.
Just so you know.
I feel like life's too short not to laugh and have some enjoyment with things. Isn't there some kind of like endorphins released when you laugh and things? It kind of just makes things better.
Yeah, but you can't force it. There's a very natural thing here where, thank goodness. I mean, how many other people can you really laugh with Power BI? I don't know. I really don't know that number.
I mean, how many data jokes can you really get your hands around? Not that many.
ChatGPT about 37.
Thank you, ChatGPT. Scouring the internet for funny jokes.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's jump into a couple of our main news items here. So one of the news items that we saw just come out recently is this is in the description below. I will also throw the link here as well into the chat. There is now a Data Factory Spotlight that has just come out. They're trying to highlight a new feature here of Data Factory. A new activity has recently appeared, and it's the pipeline activity. So you can now refresh your semantic models using the pipeline at the end of a data loading process, which it should have been there for a while, but it never made it to Azure Data Factory. So this is a really good feature. Any comments from your guys' perspective on using this or thinking this is a needed feature?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of articles out there about how to do this with Power Automate. It's already available in Power Automate to refresh the semantic model.
Yes.
And again, to your point, this is one of those now. I mean, it's great, thank goodness, but it
should have been there day one kind of thing. I mean, this is a big win in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's one of those what do they call them? Ease of life use.
Ease of life. Ease of use.
That's the thing.
Better my life. Like thank you. I mean, obviously, it's you can use APIs and you can refresh from ADF right now. Nice that they're adding it in the Fabric ecosystem. But yeah, a little task that lets you easily do something is always better than having to figure out the configurations and set it up. And
it's funny
have all the tax, right? Like wait on completion.
Yes.
Right? So like that's one. That's one where that's nice because you can fire off like, yep, the refresh completed versus just what it by nature is right now, where you're just like, yeah, go run it, and then I'm moving on through the ADF pipe. So if it fails for any reason, it's harder to track that. But yeah, in this way, it's easy to see. So
I think there's actually 2 API calls that actually need to be made to make this work properly, because we've built some more elaborate,
Yep.
call wait response, because the refresh activity is actually an asynchronous response, meaning send it and then it just gets kicked off. There's nothing that comes back and says, "Oh, it's complete," or doesn't leave the refresh open, because that port or that call could be open for hours at a time. Your refresh could take a long time. So this one, I believe, is click off the refresh, and there's another API call that says, "Okay, now that I've started the refresh, what's the refresh ID?" Keep calling that every so often until it's completed. Now, there's probably something smart behind the scenes, but the idea here is that you're able to then wait until that refresh is complete, which makes a ton more sense. What we would do previously, there's 2 ways you solve this previously. Either you have a whole bunch of other actions, like 3 or 4 calls, get a token, make a call, make the web call, wait, and continually calling something over and over again until it returns back success or failure. Or you kick it off and just move on, or you go into the service and just say, "Okay, my data loaded should be done by about, 7 a.m." And you just kind of fat finger in, "Okay, well, we'll just give it an hour to rest, and then we'll kick off the refresh."
Should work by
You just schedule it independently, which can come with all kinds of problems.
And that's that's the significant part, is probably the waiting till success, because in Power Automate, you can get the success signal, but it doesn't wait. So you have to do a lot of looping to actually check. And that was the only API. I feel like a lot of APIs are just a user interface waiting to happen.
I mean, that's kind of what a web app is built on top of, though. I mean, you're kind of right. I mean, that's why you build a web application, because all the web application just sits on top of APIs that talk to something else in the back end. Yeah, that's what they're there for. Anyways, good new feature. I believe this is from Mark Cromer? No, Alex Powers. Even better.
Even better.
I hope Alex is out there listening to this one, because we're talking about your feature, Alex, and you wrote a good blog article on it. So we're very pleased around that one. All right, moving on. Let's jump over to another topic that we thought was relevant here. There is another announcement here for the AutoML is beginning to be deprecated. Tommy, give us a little bit more details on this one. I think you had some topic items around this particular area.
When Microsoft giveth, Microsoft taketh away. So
I'm not sure if they really gave us the beginning. I don't know. Maybe they're just deprecating something no one used.
So in case you didn't know, which I'm actually a surprise always when people don't know, a feature existed in Dataflow's Gen 1 was actually the ability on an existing Dataflow to run an auto machine learning model. There are about 5 models, I think, at one point. And if you wanted to know more, well, too late. It's gone. It's now officially deprecated. But I mean, it was a pretty neat feature, but obviously not a ton of use. It's gone. It's not available in another tooling in a data flow. They didn't move it. They simply have removed the ability to take an existing data flow or query and running AutoML model across it.
Now, I don't. So let's just be clear around some of this stuff. I think this is another one of these, hey, we weren't getting a lot of usage on it originally. People were probably just trying it. And honestly, I've tried it a couple times and it was a very clunky experience. It just didn't really smoothly execute the way I thought it should. And I think it also uses, I had to double check on this one. I don't know, don't quote me on this one, but I believe it uses some sort of Azure compute in order to do its job.
Well, you don't need Azure. You don't need any license key or subscription to do it.
For this one, I thought there was a license, something that came from Azure side to make you do something there.
That's on the desktop, the cognitive load.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Okay. Yeah. But regardless, though, okay, cool. We had AutoML, but I believe AutoML is now already in notebooks. So
in the data science.
Yeah. So I think you're getting it in Fabric now.
But that maybe if we look at this a little differently, instead of saying maybe there was no usage, maybe now that there's a more complete solution in Fabric, it's no longer needed.
That's kind of where I was going with it.
We're just switching where it is for a better experience
to pay more money for CUs.
Multiple. I didn't say it.
Who said that? I didn't say that. I didn't say that. You mean you should be paying money for things you want to use. It's not, none of this stuff's free. You should be. I say that in jest. It's a good feature if you find some value from it. This is also where I'm thinking AutoML is a really interesting feature. I need to spend more time with it personally. And again, I like the idea of it. I think it's going to be a great move. But if I think about like the grow up story, I keep saying the grow up story, but it's the grow up story of Power BI. This is the kind of stuff that we're going to want to be bringing to our, I'm going to say it like this: business users turned data engineers, turned lightweight data scientists in this space. There's a lot of low hanging fruit and value in your data that you could probably throw through AutoML and get some correlation between some things. A customer churn analysis, some linear regression stuff. I mean, there's probably some things you could throw at the AutoML that it can figure out stuff for your business. And it's pretty straightforward to use. So I think that's really helpful because we're now exposing this really neat technology to people who could actually find real benefit from it. Because if the business understands the need, tie that into using this AutoML inside notebooks. So I think it's a really great opportunity here.
It's kind of the genius too, I think, of without pandering, but honestly, the genius of how Fabric's really situated in terms of it's a centralized product, but I think without the clutter, because again, in order to use the previous feature in Gen 1, you had to do it on an existing data flow, a data flow that you're probably using not for ML or not the intended purpose. What was occurring was you had to then create another query, and then you're kind of cluttering that existing data flow. Now we already have a space for that. And I think to your point, Seth, we have a dedicated space for data science for these types of features. Mm-hmm. We're not like, oh, it's kind of ML, it's kind of data science too. It's like, no. Now we actually have that dedicated space. So it does make a lot of sense to actually have that. And it with the data science and Fabric, it doesn't have to be a data flow.
Yeah, and I'm throwing this in also in the chat one into as well. So another opportunity that I think makes sense here is, I like your point there, Tommy. It doesn't have to be stuck in data flows. And to be maybe clear here, maybe data flows weren't the most efficient way to run AutoML either, right? So if I look at when I look at comparisons, I've seen some blog posts come out about this. If I write a pipeline, if I run a data flow, and I run a notebook, they all kind of have different amounts of compute usage that do different consumptions based on the compute you're using. Mm-hmm. Spark seems to be pretty doggone efficient comparatively to the other one. So some teams I've seen on blog articles have made the decision to say, look, we are only going to write data engineering in notebooks because it is so much more efficient from a CU consumption standpoint, meaning I can do more with notebooks. I could do more data engineering with less compute than I could if I was using pipelines or data flows.
Is that the origin of Jupyter Notebooks was for data science? I believe so.
I don't know the whole history of everything there. I think so. I think it came out of Spark and this whole experience around Spark. I mean, Spark has kind of been this really interesting, I have a lot of data and I need to do something very fast and I need a lot of compute power, but I need memory. So Spark is an evolution of Hadoop, which is storage of lots of data on disk. Spark is storage of lots of data in memory. And then once you had things in memory, stuff could happen really fast. And I think that's where it kind of went, leveraging the advantage of this stuff. And from there, the use case maybe was more born around machine learning and ML and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah, I think the acceleration of that really came out when you didn't have to spend all day pre-cons learning about chocolate clouds, whatever the new thing was, like
deploy,
everything, and setting up your own environment, and all of a sudden it just became a service, right? Yeah, so did I.
It was a pain.
You know what's striking me, and I don't know why it's the removal of the AutoML feature that is like giving me this aha moment, but it almost to sidetrack slightly. If you think about how the evolution of Fabric, right? Whether this was how it evolved, I have no idea. But it strikes me by removing this feature that at some point when Microsoft kept adding all of these additional features like data flows, and then we're going to add AutoML and all these things we need for our Power BI solution, right? Which is data and reporting. We've already got great ETL. We've got the great semantic model. Mm-hmm. But we need all these other things that they were building new technologies into Power BI that they already had really well-established products for. And as I'm thinking about this, I'm like, did somebody just go, why are we rebuilding everything? Let's just consolidate all of our things the same way we did with Power BI, right? Where what was the strength of Power BI right out of the gate? And what gave us so much confidence in it? It was Power Query and it was tabular models. Like the back end bones were things that have been around for a long time were well-established tools, and it was really just the front end that needed some love and figuring out.
Yep.
And thank goodness Miguel's still giving it love and figuring it out.
Yeah,
But
totally.
it's come a long way. But at the same time, the power of what we were able to do and the quick wins that we were able to provide were solid because of that like hardcore infrastructure that was there. And now, if you look at it, Fabric's the same thing. It's the same type of idea where, hey, we've got these amazing tools. Let's just bring them together into this seamless experience, and everybody understands the tool sets, and they're very robust in their own ways, so that all of a sudden I would expect we see more deprecated features of things that were built just specifically to prefer the Power BI service or for a particular use case, because not everybody could plug into all these different services, and now you can. And now the experience overall is going to be much better across that ecosystem as it knits together tighter and tighter.
One challenge that a lot of businesses face, especially, so to your point, Seth, I really want to hang on that note just a little bit longer. One of the major challenges when going from Azure to Power BI and back and forth, and there's a lot of configuration things, and especially when we're talking like virtual networks and making sure everything talks together and it's all secure. A lot of that is now just being handled in the Power BI ecosystem. So before, I mean, everything that we're talking about now kind of already existed in either Synapse, Blob Storage, Azure Data Factory. A lot of the other pieces were already there, but they weren't as quite tightly as coupled together as we're seeing inside Fabric. And to me, one of the things that I'm finding very valuable right now is the amount of friction that is being reduced every single month by them building better features, more integrations, like activities, refresh pipeline. Great. Like that's what I want. I mean, that's one more piece of friction that you've removed away from me. I'm like, I'm more apt to use pipelines and notebooks now because I can easily move things around. Wait till we get pipelines that can send parameters into a data flow. Holy cow, I'm really going to be looking forward to that one because that's going to be exciting for me. Why does that not already exist? Like it's one of those little areas of like, can I get a little bit more friction removed every single month? And now, this is what we said, I think back in like November last year, wait 6 months, 8 months, you're going to have a very compelling story because they're continually refining and sanding the idea. So it's getting much easier to use.
I have to change my analogy. For the last 9 years, I've said that I believe that Power BI is the iPod for data, the way that the iPod transformed the music industry. Well, if that's the case, then Fabric's probably the iPhone for communication in terms of like really what it's done. I think that friction part can't be understated. And
you know what friction I have, Tommy?
Ooh.
You keep bringing Apple into this conversation. It has nothing to do with fantastic products.
Yeah, it's like the Windows Phone. Wait, no,
I'm not talking about the Zune. I'm not bringing up Zune.
It's like when they bought Nokia. No, that's not a good idea either.
I'm talking about two revolutionary.
Maybe we should stay away from the phone analogies.
Okay. Yeah. For Microsoft. You guys are doing great.
Phones haven't bode so well for Microsoft at this point. Maybe we'll get a flipping phone that will have
moving on.
Some power. By the way, have you seen anyone? Sorry, totally random side note on phones. Have you seen anyone using one of those phones that like literally fold in half, where you like open it up and it's like a bigger screen because it like opens?
On a commercial.
That's what I've seen. I've seen. I've never ever seen anyone like. Does anyone ever sell these things? I don't know where they go. Anyways,
nor do I want to be seen with that. I feel like if I see anyone doing that, I'm like, I'm not going to talk to that person.
Well, I feel like there was a Windows phone that was supposed to like fold in half or fold open and had a bigger screen. And it was like this. Now you can have your full Outlook, like as if I couldn't use it before on my phone previously. Here's more screen to clutter up with buttons that I don't understand inside Outlook. Anyways, moving on.
Bring back the keyboard.
That was a very large rabbit trail. Let's move on. All right. Anyways, apparently I got up earlier enough today and my coffee is kicking in. Let's jump into our main topic for today. So main topic for today, there's not actually an article. We're just going to kind of just generally discuss things. Let's talk about why quick wins are so important. And maybe we probably need to define when we say, what is a quick win? What does that mean? So Tommy, give us a little kickoff here. What does a quick win mean to you? And where are we going with the topic today?
The origin of this actually came from our implementation series, our 11-part series. And one of the big things we talked about was there's a lot of planning and prepping, usually with Power BI projects, whether you're adoption, implementation, or just shifting gears in some space. And I'll define quick wins as it's the early low-hanging fruits that you can do that people can actually see a definite and manifested impact of whatever the project's going to be. It's something they can touch, something they can see, something they can interact with. And I think our conversation that we previously had was, man, we should really focus on these, shouldn't we? And I think that's what I'll start with in terms of they are integral. I have thousands of examples, but let me start there and see what you guys think.
When your description includes manifested impact,
Man,
wow,
that was off the cusp.
that's impressive.
I
gotta Google that. I have to Google those entire words together. Like, what does that even mean?
Listen, I think unfortunately I'm on cup 4.
Created your own impact. Yeah.
You manifest the impact that you want to have manifested. Manifestation is like, I want it to happen, therefore it will happen.
Will it into existence.
So willing the impact into existence.
Mhm.
That's
not bad. I feel pretty. I'm gonna
nice
sign
job.
off now.
Nice job.
So,
That's a t-shirt. Yep.
That's a t-shirt.
That's a little long one. Yeah.
I think the t-shirt should be I manifest impact.
Yeah. It's a lot of ink.
It's a lot of ink, but I think it's worth it.
Okay. I'll buy it.
All right. Going to a store near you, manifesting impact.
So quick wins.
So I have a lot of thoughts on quick wins. So I like what you're defining there. I think for me, defining a quick win is really around taking a business problem and boiling it down or distilling it down into something that we can then solve, right? So to me, a quick win would be, hey, we have this process. People are being thrown at some data stuff. It takes us 2 hours, 3 hours, half a day to compute the information. Let's build a process around that and shorten that down to like a refresh every night. And in the morning I show up and the data's ready for me. Like, so it's gone from like something that took a long time to produce, and I'm now producing like a regular output of that same information. I'll give you a blatant example from one of the consulting clients I went through. They had a manufacturer, distributor of stuff, and so they weren't a huge company, but what they were able to do is they were doing a lot of things inside Excel. Their Excel files were getting slower. There's a lot of big things. We're pulling a lot of things from different data sources, but they had pretty much a central data store where all the transactional data was coming from. So what we were able to do is we were able to build an entire Power BI data model that housed all of their transactions for their entire company's history into one data model. So it was incredibly impactful because instead of trying to define in the Excel document every single cell or format or visual or chart, or like having all the data come in, because again, that file will get very bloated, by using the columnar store, by able to compress the data, we were able to shove all the company data into one large semantic model. And from there, we had N number of people hitting it, accessing it, trying to absorb that data and try to produce what they needed to impact their job. So it was more of a data access issue because it was a bottleneck. One person made this Excel file, and then that was kind of shared without the company. Now we had a central data model, which we could then distribute to multiple people, produce some canned reports, but we'd let people discover and do some self-discovery on top of it. Now, this was maybe a weird use case because not every company has all their transactional data in one data set. But that was hugely impactful for them because that process had traditionally been fractured across many different files. And it was on SharePoint, and it was on drives. And so now we have this portal that we can go to find the information. So I feel, to me, that is a good definition of like a quick win, right? Something was hard. We've made it simpler. We give you a new process that's actually more efficient than the old one. So that's how I would define it. Anything, Seth, for you, or that you would want to define differently?
Well, I think that's an example of a quick win for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Creating efficiencies, and even on a simplified version of that, right, where folks are just in Excel doing copy and paste, doing some formulas. Like how many times have you walked in where folks aren't using Power Query in Excel, which is also an option for creating an efficiency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Start using this thing that will automate all the things that you do every time. And this is what virtuous waste, right? In an organization where people are literally just like, yep, I have to go run this report. I extract the data. I put the data in my Excel spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
I review, and I have to like make sure the formulas are right. And then I'm copying this into the next tab and the next tab and the next tab. And 6 or 8 hours or multiple days later, you get a report. So this is an example of like, hey, what parts of that can we peel out and automate right away? And some of those are larger projects, but like, what's the quick win? Time savings, right? In terms of,
Yes.
Is it a quick win if you can spend 2 weeks and save, overall a month of time? Yeah.
Mhm.
I think some other quick win examples we could probably talk about are like providing insights that otherwise are difficult for the organization to consolidate together,
Mhm.
or just in general generating data sets that otherwise are inaccessible, right? As
Mhm.
a good quick win.
So yeah, the one thing I don't think I'm disagreeing with, but for me, either the most impactful quick wins or really how I would really define it, it's always an impact towards a goal, a bigger goal. It's a small solution towards a bigger problem. I don't see quick wins really existing siloed in terms of we're just randomly doing a quick win. It's we're going to work on this project, whether it's adoption or adopting Power BI, and what along that journey can we display or show that's going to have an immediate impact towards the actual intended audience. And to me, it always has to be on that journey towards whatever the bigger problem or bigger project is, at least for to me to see the most net impact.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, but you're also driving. I mean, a lot of this conversation we're talking about reporting in Power BI and what we can do
Yeah.
within an organization.
Yes.
But more often than not, quick wins are discussed in the realm of you're just joining an organization, you're trying to like provide some value right out of the gate, you want to show your value. But in reality, like we kind of have the opportunity to do that a lot within the organization, right? Because you're working with potentially many different teams, and the value of the quick win, I think, goes beyond just the delivery of something, because the outcome is hopefully a visible success
Mm.
for the organization, right?
Mhm.
Or for somebody. So, like, ultimately, what is that doing to spur on like more Power BI?
Mm.
Or, hey, and I suppose this is even applicable to ramping up Power BI in the organization, right? Because what do those activities do for those people? Those early successes, it generates excitement, right? Like,
Right.
holy crap, you just saved me 4 hours, a
Yes.
week, in my like a half a day a week, in just stuff I was doing, and you showed me how I can do that in the future, or how I can, you know, improve the efficiency of my job, or you just gave me the insight I needed to go make this decision with confidence, instead of every week being super stressed out and kind like giving my best guess, but that's the
Yeah.
final answer. And ultimately, I think where this ticks in really big, impactful things for an organization, and this mindset of quick wins, albeit I agree with you, it's not the stopping point,
Mm.
is it increases the morale, or has the potential to, of the areas that you influence.
Yeah. There's a song I would actually equate with quick wins, and it's the Willy Wonka song, because to me it's that like
I knew we were going to go
see
chocolate.
me and you
See,
will be. Yeah, we're doing the chocolate thing in a world of pure imagination. And I think to me, like when I think of quick wins, it really is. It's yeah, to your exact point, and it's what can we accelerate? I identify in any project that I'm doing. What quick wins can we display in the upcoming few weeks, even if it's a longer project? Because I think you said the magic word, Seth. It's the morale. It's people getting that excitement out there. And you have to do that if you want people on board with attention spans, with we're spending money, with how long is this project going to take? Because a lot of times our other conversations, there's always complications that will arise, and they will arise. What can we do to show what can this be? Or let's get a little taste of what are we actually working towards. And to me, I consider quick wins as crucial as the final project.
well, I don't know if I.
It's a bit
Yes,
of a
yes,
hot
I
take, but
suppose
yeah.
for buy-in, right?
Yeah.
I like Andrew Borger in the chat, says quick win should open your audience's eyes to the potential of the tool, and that is something we didn't discuss yet, right? If you think about the capabilities brought together in Power BI, right? especially for the business user, and to an extension now Fabric, but it's more the ecosystem, I think, or the next steps. That was mind blowing. Like when you're introducing these capabilities, and it's easy enough for business to be like, wait a minute, I just have to click this button. I know where my Excel file is. The data's in there, and you just did a transformation, and you're modifying. Your wife had this like, what?
Yeah.
I can change data. Yes, you can. You can massively change every value in the
Quick win
column.
for me, yeah.
And it blows people's minds, especially when you're trying to develop a data culture or have people understand data to a better degree and how you can manipulate it. Those are the things that I think generate excitement, right?
I would agree with that one. I think I like the idea of excitement here, because I think a lot of the excitement of this initial builds of projects kind of carries on throughout the rest of the Power BI deployment, right? So there is some things that are just not fun when it comes to Power BI. There's just some like long running, we have data problems, there's issues, we got to sniff out kind of what the challenge of things are. But like you need some quick wins to like get people excited about, yes, this does make sense. If we spend the hard time, the effort, the money to spend people to do this, there is a brighter side on the other side of this that lets us do more than we did before. But I really do think like those quick wins are kind of, you got to kind of tee up a couple here or in the beginning of a project. And then once people buy into, yes, this is valuable, now you have the capability to say, okay, now we're going to take on a hard project. Now we're going to do some real data engineering. We're going to build some bigger things. And one thing that I find a lot of is I think a lot of organizations don't understand how bad their data is until you're able to see it. Like this is one of these, things like you can't really know how your Power BI tenant is being used until you actually start having monitoring in place to actually see what it's doing. A lot of people run their Power BI tenant and think they know what's going on, but in reality, they don't. There's not a data backing up what they're doing. So where are those compute units being spent? What are they being spent on? Is there a business unit that's really abusing one of your workspaces with a lot of stuff in there? We don't know. So until you start looking or monitoring what's happening, you don't have any ability to kind of push it forward.
That's that's making me think of a few good points, but I think the biggest one is, these quick wins, they're not a demo or a preview. They're something that's actually usable, tangible, that be kind of implemented or integrated with the business today, right? It's not, we're going to show you a demo, now you can't use it for another 3 months. This is something that we can push out. I had to transform something that looked like a loss into a quick win. We were working with a client, and they realized they had no definitions around any of their metrics. Therefore, very difficult to create any type of reporting. And we had to figure out where we had some frustration. There was some like, well, what that first kind of idea, Mike, to, in so many words, to put to light that, we have no data governance, and therefore we've been doing everything with head knowledge. Mm-hmm. Where do we go from here? And how do we actually transform that into, hey, let's actually, one of our quick wins was a process we put in place, not necessarily the report, just something to say into light, like, you want to scale this. You don't want to do 15 hours of Excel. I'm not showing you Power Query. I'm saying, do you have a definition of your KPIs? Mm-hmm. And where do we centralize that? And to them, that was a huge quick win. Or it was very enlightening. It wasn't a product. It wasn't a technology, but it was something that they immediately integrated and adopted.
You know what? Do you guys find that? Well, let me pose this in a different way.
Okay.
I've found that over time here,
I like it better the other way. You were going to lead us. You were going to lead us into a trap.
I know.
You were trapping us.
There was no.
More suspense the first way.
There was no trap. There was no trap.
This is the thing. You like think of the answer. You're like, I know what the answer is. I'm going to ask them a question to see if their answer aligns with what I'm thinking. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your question.
This is not one of those times.
So he says.
I love it.
All right. I guess. Do you feel the same? Because recently I've been thinking about, what are the impacts myself or the business intelligence team can make within an organization. A lot of the time we talk about data, we talk about reporting, because these are the key cornerstones of what we do. But to Tommy's point, I found that in so many areas. I don't know if it's the data thing or being keyed into the business and solving some of the problems through reporting, that a lot of the value my team is bringing and myself is in seeing deficiencies in process.
Oh, yeah.
And I
I
don't
would
know if
100% agree with
that's
that.
by
Yeah.
nature because of like all of these things together, but it doesn't matter whether or not it's specific to like me going and building something. It's
Hmm.
anything. It's what, why are we doing that? Do we understand the time wasted when we're making that decision? Or do we understand like where we're just shifting responsibilities from one part of the organization to the other? And many people don't think in those terms. So like I often find myself probably annoying people way out of my league going, well, what was the basis for that? Like, why would we do that? What this is, that process looks like this. If we kept it this way, it would be this, and that would be much more simple for the organization to do it. Like I do this all the time, and I wonder if it's a byproduct,
Mm.
and you guys do that as well, or if it's just I'm a
Oh
weirdo.
no, I'll double down with you. I feel like it's
Okay.
almost like cheating to get quick wins that way because yeah, I'm completely online with you, and I think the same way. Where it's like, oh, did you know that, man? How long does it take to do that? They go, oh, this like we could do that in X, Y, and Z. It's almost cheating in terms of quick wins because it's so easy for us in terms of I think having the business and the technical side to go. We can solve this in X, Y, and Z in a week. And people it blows their mind that that's possible.
Yeah.
Us,
Yeah, and
it's like,
that's the technical know-how that you have. But
yeah.
that's like what I'm suggesting is a little bit. Yes, it
Mhm.
applies to quick wins, but I was making applications outside of quick wins as
Okay.
well.
Okay. Honestly, I think if you do those quick little, and I don't mean to use the word quick, but if you're finding those deficiencies or you're finding those slogs in the organization and process, to me, those equate exactly to a quick win. To be someone that's usually not something that's going to take you 3 months that you find. Is something that you immediately know the answer to when you see those deficiencies and you know how to solve it. That to me, it almost equates to a quick win. I know exactly what you're saying, but tell me the difference.
In all actuality, and this is completely unintended, which the audience will never believe. But that example, I think, also highlights one of the most important things about a quick win. It and what separates it from just identifying a process breakdown or a better way to do things is a successful quick win is a collective quick win. You're working with somebody and solving somebody's problem,
Multiple solutions are
and
being solved at the
they
same time.
want you to, right?
Yeah.
Because in the other scenario, it's like, yeah, great, you could have a quick win, you could solve it with your stuff, but if it's not going to get used or adopted or nobody wants to use it, then it's not a quick win, because the quick win is a visible success to the organization, right?
Yes. Yes.
Or a people, and that collective part, I think, is really key.
Before you move on, I want
Yeah,
to
go
just
ahead.
answer your question one more time because I really liked your point there, and I think there's a really interesting note here around. Okay, when you have a more integrated solution, other challenges present themselves as potential, like opportunities present themselves as ways to solve things, right? So you were saying like, hey, why are we doing these things? When we start talking about like the Power BI ecosystem as a integrated solution, where I start with data and I use a pipeline and I copy it down and I do notebooks and all these things, because it's all in one bucket, you can see where the friction lies in a process. So I think integrated solutions potentially expose weaknesses in our process. And I think you're asking the right questions here around these quick wins, and pushing back a little bit, because if you don't know there's an integrated solution, like I've seen this happen in other places. You buy a tool online and the tool does like 80% of what you want. So you have to go buy a second tool or build a process to meet that gap to what you actually need the data to do. Nothing wrong with that. It's just now a more complicated process. So I think every time there's a I don't know, it's a Power Automate thing or some kind of Power Automate where it's like, it's called process. Is it process mapping or process
Oh,
mining, process
flows.
mining is what it's called, maybe.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
You know what I'm talking about? So there's this concept of like, things are happening inside a process, but what does that process, how do you mine that process out? And can you take the holistic step back and say, okay, what are we trying to accomplish with this? I think you're right, asking the right question, Seth. The value back to the business is, why are we doing what we're doing? That should continually be a question. And if the answer of why we're doing this is a legit reason, cool, we move on. The legit reason happens, we're fine with it, everything moves forward, we're good to go. But if we can't answer that question correctly, it's not a quick win. We're just adding process to add process, and we may not even understand what that process means. Anyways, I thought that was a really good point, a really good observation you had there.
Yeah, and I want to touch on one real, I think, integral part of a quick win is for whom, right? If you're like, hey, we reduced the number of tables in our database from 500 to 400, the stakeholder doesn't care. They're going to go, cool. But I think the audience or the intended target of that quick win is really going to be a make or break to me, because you can do 1,000 quick wins around the technicalities and for your data scientists or the data engineers and solve a lot of problems. But to me, I think when you focus on where should we, or what quick wins should we do, or where should we focus on finding them, find them where the audience is a stakeholder, find them where the audience is someone who's a decision maker, or at least that they may not be directly impacted. It's not necessarily going to be their process, but it's something that impacts their team or their department. So at the end of the quarter, you can say, hey, here's what BI did, here's what we did, or here's what I did. We worked on this, this, and this, and they can directly see where that impact is. Because yeah, you can have a ton of quick wins, but audience is so important here in terms of who is impacted or who sees the impact, more importantly.
Yeah, and I think this is where it dovetails into a different part of the conversation where I'm a huge OKR guy, or GSMs. Like if you don't know where your organization is going, you don't know how to make the big wins, right? And I think quick wins are valuable as long as you have a clear direction of why you're implementing it, right? And that could be many various things. If there's an organizational wide effort to drive efficiencies in the business, like it could very well be that you're just hopping around doing efficiency things, but that's significantly different than hopping around doing efficiency things because you think that adds value to the business. Does it? Yes. But is it recognized, or is it an initiative, or is there something else that you should be, or is there something else that you're driving towards, as opposed to it just being busy work? Or, ultimately somebody says, hey man, I heard you do this thing, come in, spend a week. And you're like, great. How much time did I save you? 5 minutes. right. Like, well, maybe that wasn't time well spent.
Yeah.
And I think clear goals, right, at a higher level allow us to start solving these problems, and quick wins are part of that path. They shouldn't be the end goal in and of themselves, I don't think. Because whenever I'm engaging with the business, I'm looking for how I can provide value, right? Like sooner, right? And that's the quick win, but that's a stepping stone for me. And the follow-ons are, in Jira world or whatever, stories, right? The additional work that has to be done, because typically, you're moving in a direction that there's value that you're adding to the business, and either it's that quick win has deficiencies, right, that you want to solve permanently, or you're solving a problem that you could solve for the wider organization by building it into a data model, or the next steps of evolution of a repeatable artifact for the organization to reuse in a much quicker fashion. And that's where I think it extends past that, and having that vision past just this little quick win is really important, because the difference between there is a difference in my mind between a very small project that is helpful versus quick win terminology, because in my mind, a quick win is the first step in a larger effort.
So if I'm picking up what you're putting down here, you're basically saying too that anytime you're doing a quick win, you're communicating to the business, we're doing this quick win because of project XYZ or because of initiative XYZ. They don't exist Is that what I'm
Absolutely.
hearing? Okay.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that can be driven by the business. The business can say, hey, I want this really big thing. And you're like, well, okay. Well, you don't understand what you're asking for because that's like a 5, 6, 7 week project.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to like figure out how do I give you a good value and keep you on for the hook, which is like, and I think the quick win is, drives the excitement. You're solving some problems,
Mhm.
but it also resonates more in the story
Mm.
of, hey, we're gonna produce this for you, and then you give them, it resonates or makes sense to the business that you're providing value in time frames that's acceptable to them because they don't understand why it's going to take 7 weeks, right? So they're always like, typically you have to prove the value, right? If you're going to do this, you're going to spend all this time, and somehow, what I won't go too off the rabbit trail, but it's like, if it helps with the story of, we're going to build you a full complete solution, but you're going to have something in your hands that you can analyze, that you can get value of, that you can test in 2 weeks, and then we're going to increment and we're going to give you these features, right, in 4 weeks, and you're building that story of like the complete solution, but you're still giving them business value right out of the gate. Because, like, we have to remember, business doesn't move at the speed of development and technology, right? They need answers fast all the time. And you could have an argument about whether or not that's a planning problem or you have customer concerns. You have to solve this thing and you need an answer in 2 days. And that's where this rapid cycle of fire drills you can find yourself in if you don't, like, you have to address those, right? You have to solve those problems,
Mhm.
but you have to also be thinking about the future. So you're removing those problems and distractions and giving business the insights and the data that they need, so those fire drills don't hit your front door.
I totally agree with these things. I really am aligning with my observations are very similar to Seth, to what you're saying. Like, it's these things happen. And this is a, in my mind here, I'm going and I'm thinking about how do I transition away from quick wins into more strategic, longer term
Yep.
positions. So yes, quick wins are good initially, getting some people on board, getting a department leveraged, and figuring out they like what they're doing here. But then there's to me there's like a transition that needs to occur between, okay, we've had some, like, for example, another good example I think might be a quick win is we built a model, someone did it, not really efficient, not performant, things are starting to fail. Right, a quick win for that team would be come in and help them optimize the model, give them some better horsepower there, so that way they can load more data. It's faster, it's incremental refresh. Teach the team something new. You've created a quick win. Their data now is refreshing. Okay, now let's talk about what knowledge did we gain from that quick win, and what can we do to either repeat it with other teams or provide it for documentation back to the broader organization. And now we start chipping away at these bigger initiatives, which is everyone in the company needs a better effort around data culture. Everyone in the company needs some more, capabilities around what's going on here. So I think there's, in my mind, is I'm trying to transition away from a couple of those quick wins and then turning into more of a long-term support. Okay, let's establish a center of excellence. Let's establish a community practice. Let's start really taking these processes that we have found as good best practices and quick wins, turn them into company policies, and then start leveraging them to really impact the business moving forward.
Yeah.
I think that's the heart of it. This is what I love this, because I think without the longer scope or follow up of a quick win, it's just a fix. We're really talking about either it's a fix or it's a quick win. And I think one thing, as I'm hearing both of you, I feel like what could really derail or honestly harm what you're trying to do or what you've just achieved, if that quick win has no follow-up, if that quick win has no additional communication, to your point, on the longer term picture, then you're just doing fixes. Then you're just solving fires to the business. You're not actually working on something that's going to be a bigger impact.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm really seeing here this quick win as, to your point, it's one of the initial stages of a project, but it has to be one of the initial stages of some type of project or initiative. And to me, it's not just doing it. I don't want to focus here, but I want to just really iterate that you have to communicate this. You have to say why you're doing this to the stakeholders and what what little paintbrush does this play in the larger picture?
Hmm.
Or else you're not going to get the buy-in to the business. You're just doing a fix. You're just doing your job,
Mhm.
not getting so. And I think we did this quick win. Hey, can we get more money? Can we get more resources? Or because of this, we could do so much more, and really utilizing the quick win.
And that's the key, and that's where I think, to your point, you need to do operational things that keep the business running, and those are sometimes the fire drills or data access, but
Yep.
there's a lot in that nugget of things that you could extrapolate and solve longer term.
Mhm.
I think just for example's sake, when I want to walk through a specific scenario, so because a quick win, as I've been saying, is a part of a process. So to walk people through, if you're not thinking in those terms, an example of like how I would think about a report build, and a good example of like a quick win. It's a brand new area, brand new business. We don't have access to the data quite yet. We've got to figure out what that ETL pattern looks like. Yes, this belongs in our model, like this a central data mart, etc. How would I produce a quick win? A quick win to me would be, okay, I'm going to look in totality of the things we want to build. They want a report that has 4 pages. We go through the requirements gathering. We figure out all the things that they need. From there, we determine, okay, can we pull out 2 of these pages? Because a lot of this data is very straightforward. We're just doing simple sums, ags, etc. A quick win is, let's use this opportunity to directly connect with Power BI. We're going to rough out the ETL and Power Query, right? Figure that out with the business. What are all the transforms? We're going to connect to the data sources. This is our ongoing effort of discovery of data, right? Working with the business to validate the data outputs, and we're going to give them 2 pages. And we're going to accomplish that in 2 weeks, right? Something to that effect.
Yep.
But that's not where I stop. And the problem is like a lot of places do stop because we connected to the data, we got the transforms, and we gave the business. When business intelligence teams engage here, which is typically like kind of what we're talking about, the next step is, how do I refine and pull that ETL into our enterprise systems? Like, I need to connect this to Azure Data Factory. I'm going to take the learnings that I had from my quick win and apply them to my pipeline, which now I have my, the same things on the output in the same processing times. And now I can develop report page 3 and 4.
Mhm.
This is now 4 or 5 weeks in, right? So the business now has everything that they need. And now I have like a tech debt item, which is, does this data belong in my data mart for this, area of the business? Yes, it does. I need to build this into that, make all these adjustments on the back end to make sure that, I'm in like pulling this data in, and then I can shift the report front end over into pulling from the data mart. And now I have my full complete solution where this report is now just part of the ecosystem. But the difference between me going, I need 8 weeks to finish that project because it's got to come out of the data mart because we built this for your business area, is the quick win.
Yes, correct.
I gave the business value, and then I gave them more value. And then behind the scenes, I'm doing other stuff that I'm going to bake into other estimates, right? Hey, yep, somebody's got 40 hours of time. I'm only going to book out 34 or 30 because 10 hours in the next sprints are to solve this other problem, because now I've got that data in my data mart. And now next time somebody else from the business goes, hey, can you add pages 5 and 6 because I really want that?
Yes.
Boom.
Yep.
Absolutely we can. It's already pulled in.
Mhm.
Here's the data. It's part of my data mart. We've already got that all together.
It snowballs.
And that's
to some degree.
the value, right? But I'm thinking long term about the infrastructure, how these things are pieces. So is quick wins applicable in this scenario all the time? No, I'm thinking of it from like a business intelligence team engaging with the business.
Yep.
But I think what my final point would be is like, there's always value in opportunities where a project is going to take a really long time, to look for these streamlined ways in which to provide visible
Progress. Yeah,
and successes
I agree.
along the journey of a project. And that's where you're going to get buy-in with big, huge projects of Power BI implementation, or just smaller areas where you're building out a report. is looking for these opportunities to incrementally add value.
Mhm.
And then behind the scenes, you don't really need to talk about the tech debt stuff. Like, it's just
Yeah.
you're building for the future of the organization, or you're building for the future of reusable things within your business unit. And that's work that just kind of tacks in on a different work stream.
I like that a lot. That's a really interesting. I think I agree with a lot of that, Seth. And I definitely, one thing I would say that works well for, I think, organizations is, especially after you've gotten through a couple quick wins with Power BI, really starting to focus on centralizing that. So what you're talking about, Seth, is there's a need here around, you have some quick wins, but you're talking about longer term, bigger initiatives, more strategic moves of data and things longer term. I really think that's very impactful. But that comes out of that, what I would call the governing body of that center of excellence, like where, okay, Seth, you're the one taking the initiative. You're doing these things from Central BI. There really does need to be some substantial conversation around what is our long-term objectives? How does these quick wins apply towards those bigger needs of the organization? And I think strategically, if nothing else, you should be thinking about like a quarterly plan of like, hey, this quarter we're going to try and do X. And so that way you can take these bigger initiatives and define them as, okay, in the beginning of the quarter, we're going to do a couple quick wins. Here's 1 or 2 quick wins we're going to try and do this quarter. But then there's also some longer running, multiple quarter exercises. We have to clean this back end. We're going to switch out a CRM system. Like, there's going to be bigger things that are occurring across the organization that needs to span multiple quarters. So just giving some context to like, here are the quick wins we're going to produce now. Here are some things we're going to push towards a bigger initiative. And that comes out of that center of excellence, I think really is impactful. And it really helps organizations see the value short term, but also more value long term.
No, Mike, I am 1,000% with you, because you're just talking out of the big book of data governance, right? Because you have the committee who's saying, what are our biggest problems or initiatives we need to do? Then that puts together a task force.
Yeah.
Because I think the one thing I've seen with myself, and I've seen with teams I've worked on, where we worked on a lot of what I thought were great projects, but the stakeholders, the people who were, who made the decisions, didn't necessarily see the impact. So even though they were valuable to the business, like how much do you get buy-in from the people who are ultimately going to spend the dough or provide the resources? In an ideal world, you have the data governance team to say, hey, we really need work on X, Y, and Z, or better consumption of our data, or it's too low, it's too slow. Let's put together this task force. And that's where the quick wins can originate from. So if you could have a team that can do that, man, you are setting yourself up for almost immediate success.
I like it. So Seth, you kind of gave your final thoughts. Tommy, any final thoughts for you as you kind of wrap here?
See the previous 15 seconds.
Right. Okay, good. That was kind of Tommy's final thought. So I would echo your final thoughts there, Tommy. I think this is a balance between delivering value now, focus on quick wins today, and then also, incorporating that into more strategic things moving forward. And again, I think this quick wins scenario really plays very well if you look at the Power BI adoption roadmap. So if you haven't seen that, if you need to go Google that one, go Google the Power BI adoption roadmap. Really impactful. And I have used it multiple times on multiple different companies and found great success with using. This is Microsoft doing this stuff for 20 years. This is really smart people that they're saying, here are the things you need to consider when you talk about this. And so I think that's very valuable. It feels very overwhelming, but just implement a little bit. Identify where you're at. There's Melissa Coates did a great job, and Matthew Roach did a great job writing that up, saying in that quick wins, those quick wins may be level 100, level 200 type activities inside your organization. Just try and move up a level. Just try and identify where you're at, where you're weak, where you're strong, and just try and do a little bit better. I just heard a speaker, James Clear from Atomic Habits, was talking about be 1% better tomorrow than you were today. And he was talking about it personally. Like, if you're going to lift weights, you do, 10 reps today, do 11 tomorrow, right? Just do a little bit more each day. And then the phrase that came out of that was you overestimate how much you can do in a year. You underestimate how much you can do in 10 years. So there's an interesting balance there of, if you just keep improving a little bit each time, do a little bit better, do a little bit more documentation, do a little bit more each time you do it, when you look back on it 6 months down the road, you're like, wow, we made a lot of progress by just doing a little bit better each time. So anyways, I think that's the value of quick wins.
You're saying our podcast then should be an hour 10.
Yeah, next time, next episode, not this episode.
I'm just gonna,
it's too long as it is.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much for listening. We appreciate your ears on the podcast. I hope you found some value from learning about quick wins and how we see them. Hopefully you can implement a couple quick wins in your organization as well. And if you have some, we'd love to hear about it. Chat us on Twitter. Let us know on LinkedIn. If you hear about, get us some comments going. Let us know what quick wins you have found. And we'll wrap it up here. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. Do you have a question, an idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode? Head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name so we can shout you out and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of Power BI Tips social media channels.
Ooh, I thought we weren't going to miss it there.
Yeah, we're almost done. We're gearing up, and we turned back.
We got it. Recover. Got it. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.